last time was in the last podcast we was looking at Jacob being alone. We mentioned he was asking why did this man decide to appear while Jacob was alone? Why not when Jacob was with his family? And was thinking maybe Jacob had to be alone to have this experience. Otherwise, he wouldn't have had this experience that he had. He wouldn't have learned what he had to learn. So while he was having this experience with this man, he wouldn't have learned what he learned if he was around other people. Maybe because he would have got distracted. People may have intervened, and then we began to look at parables. I know I said we were going to look at parables today, but we was looking at the name Jacob. What does it mean when Jacob is asked what his name is? What is your name? We looked into his name, the meaning of his name, and we've seen the character of Jacob. Then we began talking about Jacob says, "My name is Jacob." So what I was saying is the great deceiver. He's a deceiver. I am, or we are, Jacob. The moment we acknowledge who we are, or the moment we acknowledge that, okay, there's something wrong with us, and we bring it to God, that's the first step to healing. It's that acknowledgement, that admitting that, okay, there's something wrong here, and it needs to be dealt with. And this is the point where Jacob is dealing with what's deep-rooted within inside him. God brings him to this place, and He shows him what's deep-rooted, and he gets plucked up. I know we haven't gone much into all of that, which we will in a later podcast. But it's just coming to God with with who you are, and seeing what God will do with that, and not hiding, not polishing, those parts that you want hidden, but coming vulnerable as you are. So, and then we looked at, to get to the deep-rooted issues, and what do? We was looking at, people just pray and just hope for change. We just pray for our behavior to be to be corrected, but we don't really. Well, I'm asking, do we really get to the root? Asking, why is this happening? Why is this taking place? Sometimes it's down to the questions that we ask. And then we was looking at cause and effect. What's the cause of this behavior? Why is this apple keep growing? This apple of addiction or anxiety or insecurity. Which is causing this which is causing this behavior. This fruit. Why is it? Yeah, it's down to the roots. You gotta go to the roots. What is a root cause? And then I gave an example of a child being ignored by her mother, and we looked at the damage. The potential damage that can cause. Just these little neglects of ignoring, rejection. It can lead to all types of behaviors in the future, in the long run, where you feel, I'm not loved, I'm not worthy, I'm insignificant, I'm not important, so people don't really want my attention, people don't really want me. It can lead to all types of issues like depression, anxiety, paranoia, addictions, or whatever it may be, just to get some kind of comfort. What you've been neglected in the early years. So I was looking at cause and effect, and I was saying how parables can teach us. When we learn how to apply parables, when we learn how to use it, when we learn how to read, you can actually apply it to yourself, and you can use it to look deep within, look at yourself. And so while you're doing your reviewing of your past, while you're in the process of uprooting some deep-rooted issues, parables is a good tool to use. As we use the Bible, as we, when we get verses in the Bible and we break it down, when we take our time, and even a sentence, or even in one of Ellen White's passages, we take a paragraph and we break it down bit by bit, step by step, sentence by sentence, and we use the tools to dig out what's the hidden information. This may take days, weeks. It's that process of learning how to read, using the methodology correctly. Sadly, not a lot don't know how to read. The habit that we fall into is we bring pre-knowledge to the scriptures. We bring our baggage, we bring our own ideas. We don't take the time to focus and read what the passages are actually saying. We don't use the tools to really tear it apart, compare and contrast, repeat and enlarge, progression, cause and effect. All these tools we use to bring out hidden information, what's in the text. A lot of times we have a habit of just running ahead, or wanted to move on, or just wanted to make an application without actually understanding what's being said. It's a bad habit. It takes patience. So you need patience to really sit down and take your time and read a passage, read a paragraph, read a parable, whatever it may be, and sit down and learn how to read. It takes patience, and if you don't have the patience, you won't go through that experience of growth. So with that approach, you can use the same approach with your life. You just sit down and reflect. You process. You're going through a situation. Something happens, and you sense something's rising up inside. You can call it self. Or you can call it, fear, paranoia, or anger, whatever it is. You ask yourself, what's going on? Why is this taking place? Self-awareness will make you ask why. Will enable you to be able to ask the question, what is this? Why is it here? I've noticed every time I'm in this situation, this happens inside. This is happening. It's a pattern. It's a continual thing that takes place. So why is it taking place? How did it get here in the beginning in the first place? So when you start to ask these questions, you begin to uproot it. What caused it? Cause and effect. What's the root cause? And then you trace it back all the way to the beginning, and you look at what happened at the beginning. Maybe it happened in your childhood. Maybe your mom neglected you. Maybe it was abuse, or whatever it is. You go to the root cause. You get to the root cause by asking the right questions. So anyway, let's continue with where we left off. So I mentioned the principles we use in parables can teach us a lot about ourselves. So it can be used to help us overcome many issues if we understand how to use them. So I just want to focus on cause and effect, and then a bit on compare and contrast. So if anyone's been to therapy before, I'm not saying all need to go to therapy, but what they use, there's certain techniques what they use in therapy. It comes under different names, but I'm calling it cause and effect. Cause and effect technique, even though it's named something else, but it's actually cause and effect. You have an issue. So to say Jacob, let's use Jacob as an example. You know, he deceives. He's got behavioural habits, and he doesn't stop. He just continues. So if you go back to his early years, it will teach you a lot about the root cause, because that's where he began. That's where he first began to deceive. So what therapy will do, it will take you to the root cause, and it will make you face it. You go to the cause of that behavior, and you have to face it. And it may be scary, it may be ugly, it may be so dark, because the roots may involve, it may be abuse, violence, torture, separation. It may be a violent experience, it may be a dark experience, it may have been traumatizing, traumatic. But if you don't face it, you can't get healed from it. I got a saying, what you cannot face, God cannot heal. So if you don't face it, I mean, there's ways to face it if it's so traumatic. Some people have PTSD and all those types of issues. I mean, there's ways. If things are so dark, there's ways. You don't just go into it. There's ways, there's techniques how to cope with the emotional stress. When you're dealing with deep-rooted issues like PTSD or whatever it is, you need to learn how to cope facing these issues. But I'll just keep it simple for now. So, I mean, it doesn't have to be therapy, but you can do it on your own. When you're dealing with issues, you go to the root cause and you face it. You go into the roots, you're digging up the dirt, and you're looking at the roots, and you see, and you will see and understand the driving force behind your behaviors. What makes an apple grow on a tree? You pluck an apple and it grows back. What makes it grow? It stems from the roots. If there's no roots, there's no growth. The roots are in the ground doing the work, giving life, sucking up the nutrients out of the dirt and giving life to the tree and making the apples grow and so on. You can pluck the tree, you can stop the behavior, but it will just come back maybe in a different form, because the roots are still there, the driving force is still there. Yeah. So you see and understand the driving force behind your behaviors. Then what it will do when you look at the driving force, so what's the driving forces behind your behaviors, when you begin to deal with that now, what that does, it disarms those negative self-beliefs. Is that the right word?
Disarms.
Yeah. You disarm the negative self-belief. The reason why you behave a certain way, because you believe something. Beliefs drive you to behave a certain way. I believe I'm wonderful, so you act like you're wonderful. Or I believe I'm not good enough for that, so I won't attempt to do that because I know I'm not good enough. So I do something else what I believe I'm good at. Yeah. Beliefs have powerful how do I say it?
Influence.
A powerful influence on your behavior. Yeah, that's it. So when you decide to make that decision to face an issue, face a root cause, then the power is there to disarm those negative self-beliefs, what you've held on to, the power that drives you to behave negatively, those behaviors that you cannot control gets broken. It gets broken. The roots are unplucked. So that negative self-belief you received as a child, what you interpreted with your childlike thinking, like what Paul says, I once thought like a child and spake like a child. It's not always right. It's not always correct. So what you received as a child, how you perceived it, how you interpreted it, may not have been correct. It's just how you received it, how you interpreted the thing. You'd be surprised. That thinking, that belief, even if it's from a small event, continues all the way up until your adulthood. So you think the same, you believe the same. So if you receive the message that I'm not worthy, even if the parent, let's go back to the child, what I mentioned in the last podcast, that child being ignored by a mom, while the mom just remains on her phone while the child is asking for her attention. So look at me, mom, look at what I'm doing, look at my achievement, and the mom ignores her and remains on the phone. Just that can say many words. Silence can still speak. And that the child may read into that and come to the conclusion that I'm not worthy because my mom decides not to look at my achievement. That means my achievement is not good enough, it's not worthy to be acknowledged. That's a message a child can receive, even though the mom's not saying that. It could be the mom's got a text that, I don't know, a relative just died and she's so focused upon that, she's so shocked, and what. It could be anything. We just don't know. But the fact is, the child is craving for that attention and she didn't get it. So she can read into that. She could read it wrong. So every situation is different. Every situation is different. But what I'm saying is you can read things wrong. And with that wrong reading, or even people can feed us negative things. And Satan knows what he's doing. He knows how to feed us false beliefs. He knows how to install false beliefs, false lies. Parents can neglect or purposely neglect. People can harm us. People can say bad things to us. Peers can put us down. Peers can bully us in our early years and say horrible things to us. And then we take these things as truths. We take it on as truth. So we're fed negative lies, false lies. We take it as truth. We take it as our value. But these things can be just wrong, and we believe it as truth, and with these truths follow us all the way throughout our lives. And you'll be surprised as adults, we still hold on to these little truths, hold on to these lies as truths, and it has an influence on our behaviors. You'll be surprised. You only realize that when you start to analyze, to reflect on who you are and why you do the things you do. So, back to therapy. It will make you view the root cause from an adult perspective and make you see the truth for what it really is. Cause and effect. You may have believed like a child, but you'll see that something was wrong. What you believed was wrong. So you find out the truth. You find out the truth that there's nothing really wrong with you. You wasn't really dumb like the bullies told you. You're not nothing like what the bullies told you. So what you do now, you replace these lies with truth. And once you find the truth, and then you believe the truth, you understand, no, there's nothing wrong with me. That false belief, that driving force behind your behaviors is broken. So it loses its power to make you behave the way you behave. It loses its power to make you avoid social interactions, whatever. It makes those negative behaviors what we can't stop doing. It's broken. It stops. It comes to an end because the driving force behind them is broken. I hope that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's the power of installing truth. It changes who you are. It changes your behavior. That means if it's lost its power, certain behaviors will stop. Why? Because there are no more underlying issues that's driving them. Yeah. So when Jacob realizes he's been deceiving all these years, he's been a deceiver, he's been doing all these things, it comes to an end. It comes to an end, and then he's changed. He doesn't continue. His name is named Israel from there on. So so this is like an example of what therapy will do. I'm not saying you have to go to therapy. You can do it if you not understand the tools, if you understand what you're doing. There's many techniques, and these techniques are given. If you understand how to read, you see these techniques in the Bible, what God does. You know, it does it with Jeremiah. You know, when is it Jeremiah 1:5, I think, or something like that. Jeremiah is, God says something to Jeremiah, and Jeremiah responds saying, "Ah, no, I'm just a child." And God says, "Don't say that. I've ordained you. I've ordained you to do this. You have the ability to do it." But Jeremiah responds from his insecurity. "I'm just a child." Because it gives an excuse not to go and speak. Because I'm just such a... It limits himself, and God says, "No, I see what's in you, and I want to show you what's in you." So God does this throughout the Bible. So let's look at compare and contrast. Emma, what's compare and contrast?
It's where you take essentially a minimum of two things or two ideas or concepts and you compare and contrast them, so you bring them together to see their similarities and their differences so that you can learn more about each thing, I suppose,
Yeah.
or one thing.
Yeah, and
Give you a bigger picture.
we always pray to be like Jesus. We pray to be like Jesus. So there's Jesus and here's us. You know, we can see similarities. We aim to be similar. You know, we don't desire to be. We don't want to be on a contrast side. You know, compare Jesus and Satan. Compare and contrast. Total opposites. Good and evil. We desire to be like the evil. Not sorry, like the good. We desire to be like Jesus. It's total opposite to evil. That's compare and contrast. But the two people, two figures, two characters, two personalities. You know, you learn from them both. You know, you put them together and you learn. You can paint a big picture. You know, but we can learn even when we compare ourselves to Jesus. We look at Jesus and we look at us. We see the differences. We can see the comparisons. We can see the contrast. When there's many comparisons, when there's many similarities, that means there's much development in us that's been taking place. You know, there's development, and over time, there should be more similarities. You know, but you have to understand Jesus, and this is why now we're learning more about Jesus. Things. This is, they say, equality. It's teaching us so much about who God is. Say 2 years ago, no, say it was 4 years, 4 or 5 years ago, we had no understanding of equality. When it comes to equality, we can see a total contrast with who we thought God was, and who God really is. Put these two beliefs together now. Who we believe God is now when it comes to equality, and who we believed He was 5 years ago, total opposite. a racist God, a sexist God, a homophobic God. You know, just looking at it now, two different beliefs, compare and contrast. But these two beliefs, 5 years ago, that belief of who we thought God was, homophobic. That belief has an influence on how we behave, on how we treat people. It influences how we look at certain people. Sexist God. It has an influence on how we treat women, what we do to women, how we talk to women, women's positions. You know, the whole headship model. What we believe has an influence on how we behave and what we do in life and life choices. A racist God. What can I say about racist?
Has impact on how you treat different races,
Yeah.
different people that you meet.
Yeah. So it has
a whole interaction with people in the church even.
Yeah, so it has an influence on how you interact with people. Yeah. The driving force behind the behaviors is the beliefs. And these beliefs were negative. So back now to the present. Our beliefs now are total opposite. Yeah. How are we behaving? Well, do we really believe that God's not a racist God? Or are we still holding on to what we used to believe? You know, just compare and contrast the two different gods the two different gods. 5 years ago, the God in our minds, but the real God. You know, there's two Jesuses. There's a Jesus in our heads and the real Jesus. The Jesus in our heads is just that idol Jesus that we had, or the idol God that we had.
There's more than two, because there's an idol Jesus in your head, an idol Jesus in my head, and in another sister's head. And so there's multiple Jesuses.
So there's many Jesuses.
It shapes our relationship. Yeah.
It's affecting us. So we need to understand the one true Jesus, and it's a process. And it will continue in 1,000 years in heaven. So the reason why I was bringing up all that is we're just looking at compare and contrast. How do we use this compare and contrast? How can we use this to really understand ourselves? Because we use it to understand God, but how do we use it to understand ourselves? And I'm still learning myself. So when you going back to looking at the root causes of our issues, you know, when you do go back to the root cause of the issue, so like Jacob, he goes back to the root cause of his issue. So you can compare and contrast him with Israel. Two different characters now. You have Jacob and we have Israel. Yeah. Compare the differences. Look at the similarities. Look at the differences. I'm not saying Jacob was fully changed. We know that he still had issues with Joseph and that, you know, with the favouritism thing. But forget all that for now. God changed his name for a reason. Some things got uprooted in that wrestle at that time of trouble, at the night of trouble. Compare the two characters. Yeah. How we behave then, and how we behave now. You see how far he's come. You know, you see the development. You know, how we used to behave in this situation, but now how he behaves now, how he responds. Compare and contrast the responses. You know, so like, how can I put it? What I want to do is think of a timeline. Think of a timeline. The line that you may have in your head is the line of the 144,000 or the priest line. But get a timeline, put your life on that line, from naught to whatever age you are. Put your life on the line. Ellen White talks about this, I think. Put your life on the line. Put all the significant dates, the key people that's has an impact, that's who has had an impact upon your life and who you are today. Maybe school, your childhood, parents, siblings, family, the school years, teenage years, early adult years, and so on. You know, your career, your jobs, you know, how you came to Christ. Put all the events on your line. Put your whole life on this line.
A long line.
It may be a long line, but then you'll be able to see the amount of growth that you've gone through, that's been taking place, the level of development. You should see the development, and you should see how far you come. You should see where God's took you from, and you can see where God's bringing you. You can see where the hand of God has been upon you.
It'd be useful to trace your view of God through all that as well, your relationship with God
Yeah.
through that, as well as people.
So you can see the times where 5 years back where this false belief of God, how it impacted your behaviours, and you can see the development with this new view of who God is. You can look back at the development in your behaviour in the past 3 years, in how you've treated people. You know, so you can look back and just look at the good things, what's happened throughout your life. Obviously, you can look at the bad things. You know, you can see the things that's impacted you. And it's a good exercise. But what you can do now with this compare and contrast. So this lifeline is also a line of progression in your walk with God, in your personal development. It's also a line of progression. That's one of the things we notice in the Bible. Line of progression with the line of slavery, the line of equality. Equality.
Gender.
Line of gender, yeah. That's a line of progression. So you can see end from the beginning. We'll get into that. In fact, we say the end from the beginning for the next podcast. So you put your life on the line, and you look at these dates. Look at dates. Compare and contrast to how you think of the things, significant things, or people that has caused a deep reaction to you. Maybe it's someone who stole your food or whatever, and it's in the past. There's someone done something to you, and you've reacted. It's a reaction that you cannot forget. It's caused some emotion inside you, some jealousy or some hatred. Look at that reaction and say, this reaction is a regular reaction. This reaction of this anger or this hatred or whatever, this emotion. You know, to say this situation, this circumstance rises up again and again and again and again, and look at your monitor. Okay, I noticed this has happened a few times. Let me just look at my reaction in each situation. Has it been the same? Is it similar? When you compare them, is it similar? Or are there any contrasts? Compare and contrast. If there's no contrast, that means there's no development. That means you haven't faced that issue. There's an issue what's causing you to rise up, or causing you to have this anxiety attack, panic attack, whatever it is. If it's still continuing, if these reactions are still similar, that means there's no contrast. That means there's no, does it make sense? There's no acknowledgement that there's an issue, or you haven't been facing it. So it's going to continue, and you can just predict when it happens again. When this situation happens again, you can just predict you're going to react the same way again and again and again and again until you face that issue. You look at the cause and the effects. When you uproot those root causes, when this situation happens again, you can predict there's going to be a compare and contrast with the past, with the future. I'm not going to react how I reacted in the past. It's going to be total contrast. It's going to be peace and calm. So what caused anger, you're going to be at peace. You know, what caused impatience in me? You're going to see patience. What caused a lack of confidence? You're going to see confidence. Because I've uprooted the driving force behind my low lack of confidence or my low self-esteem. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you put your life on the line, you can see the compare and contrast within your development of your behaviours. And if there's no contrast, if there's not much contrast, if you're seeing your certain behaviour or certain reactions and it's not positive, and you're seeing it's an ongoing thing, and there's no contrast, that means there's something that needs to be dealt with. There's something that needs to be acknowledged. And I know these exercises, some may not want to do it, or they may think I haven't got time for this. It's too long. It's tiresome. I've got so much things to do. But just think about this. Your reactions are going to remain. You're going to remain reacting the way you react. Maybe in anger or frustration. It's going to remain until it's acknowledged. You can pray about it and pray for peace. You can just pray. If there's no action, if you don't go to the root with God, then what are you asking for? You want God to work a miracle and say, Lord, just uproot these roots. You need to acknowledge your roots. You need to learn from it. You need to learn from these errors. You need to learn. You need to compare and contrast truth and error, and learn from it. You know, it's a learning experience that we have to go through. So we go back to Jacob. We go back to Jacob. I was gonna say something. So yeah, it's comparing. It's important. So we go back to Jacob, and you ask yourself, put yourself in his shoes, in his situation. And I know we didn't do what Jacob did specifically, but just look at the principle behind it. Look at what he actually did. Would you really do things differently or behave in the same way? If you put yourself in his shoes in modern day society, look at the things what Jacob done. You know, remember, we are Jacob. You know, have we allowed fears to hide God's provision from our view? Have we looked back and seen, God was with me then, God provided for me then, but I didn't realize because of what was going on inside. I was troubled, I was in fear, all these were going on inside, and I didn't realize God was with me, God was providing for me. You know, I prayed for this and God provided, but I didn't realize. Do we do that? That's what Jacob done. You know, with the angels, when God provided the angels, Jacob seen it, but his fears of Esau was still overbearing. So he started to protect himself in his own strength. He felt he had to protect himself in his own strength. So when Jacob deceived Isaac, putting on Esau's garments to get what he wants, allowed himself to be manipulated by his mom. He was told to sin, and he didn't say no, and he thought it was too far to turn back. Have we all been in those situations where we haven't stood up for truth? Have we put on a mask because of maybe insecurities, where we believe that if I be myself, I'm gonna expect rejection, because that's been always my result, rejection. Or is my result in the early years, so I just believe I'm not good enough. being myself is not good enough. People think I'm not good enough. So I have to put on an act. I have to put on an act. Pretend to be the people want. The person people want. I want to be him. So that's going to be my idol. I'm going to try and be that person. Because people like that type of person. Being me is not good enough. So Jacob puts on Esau and he gets what he wants. It's a different scenario, but it's the same. It's the same thing what happens in today's world. People put on masks, pretend to be other people. You can't be yourself. You're not comfortable being yourself. It causes something inside to stir up, or some sort of fear or discomfort inside. So you can't be yourself. Maybe around certain people. Maybe there's something deep rooted there to why. You know, Jacob didn't confront his fears. You know, are we just saying? You know, have we allowed things to absorb our minds? Like Jacob, you know, things that are good for us, like the birthright for Jacob. But how he handled it, it led to destruction. You know, if you just rewrite that for our time, what does that look like? You know, when we misplace good and use it for evil. There's so much in Jacob, but if you just compare yourself with him, how many similarities would you find?
I think you know what, I just think that we be like an onion, and you know, the more you peel, the more layers you find underneath.
Yeah.
To get to know who you really are.
Yeah. So when you look at it in this way, it may be scary, but you begin to learn. You know, people may say, "Oh, don't look at all the negative stuff. Just think of the positive." You know, but you learn from the negative, because we experience the negative. We put into practice the negative a lot of times. Someone said, people gravitate. Maybe you can explain this, Emma, about gravitating towards the evil.
Yeah, it's natural for us to focus on the negative things that have happened, even though 10 positive things might happen. If one negative thing happens, there's a desire to undo that negativity, to get rid of it, to overcome it. So there tends to be a focus on it, or it troubles you and it mars your whole experience if you're not careful. So you have to bypass that reflex brain, which will automatically process that negative thing in a magnified light, and really concentrate on getting rid of negative experiences.
If we want to get rid of them.
I feel like that's what's happened with Jacob's time of trouble, that we focus so much now looking back on our lives with all the negative things that have happened, that it's very easy to think, what a miserable childhood I had, or what a miserable experience I've had up to now in my life. And then when you actually look back at all the positive, it can really outweigh the negative. But I know we're looking at the negative with a purpose to undo the damage, but I think it's important to really look at all the blessings and the happiness that you've had, and to balance that out, to really see.
So when you put your life on the line, sorry?
It's like sometimes, I mean, for me, when I look back at my childhood, I can only look back at it because it was such a wonderful, wonderful time. We did so many things in Zimbabwe, and we were so together as a community. So when you come here and you kind of like face the issues, it's hard. It's harder to look at that, because you think, wow, is that what's really going on beside all the wonderful things that, you know, you had or you did.
So are you saying you're seeing now negative things in there that you didn't really see before?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I mean, because there's, you know, I just look at it all as a cover-up. I mean, even though we had such wonderful times, it was no, it's not. Yeah, it is a cover up in a way. It's because you had all these lovely times, these bonding times, and everything, and yet people were hurting underneath that, and it wasn't coming out. You know, because everything was hidden. All your hurt, all your pain was just pushed down all the time.
Right, so maybe it's even a coping mechanism to look at the bright side of it, to cover it over with happiness, that I'm really happy but I'm not.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then it's balancing that with the fact that we should approach life, rejoice at all things. We should look at the positive out of it. But if it's been used to mask, I guess, damage, it's not the truth, I guess.
You live in a lie.
And then it's confronting the truth and looking
exactly.
at... Yeah.
Because a lot of it was masked, I think. But a lot of it was joyous too.
Yeah, exactly. It's the hard part.
Yeah, so when you deal with these coping mechanisms, you'll be surprised how much peace you really have. You experience that real joy when you uproot some of these things. You know, because you're free from that. You're free from those underlying issues that's driving you to behave certain ways, and you're putting on this coping mechanism to hide something. You know, it's...
But you think that might be good, to put on a positive, happy face, to hide pain and to hide what's going on underneath, because we should be positive no matter what's going on. So it's now hard to handle that, I think. If you've done that for a long time, you may still be positive. It may not look that different to people, but you've gone back and looked at things. I don't know.
But the thing remains, the issue remains. When you go to your
to
closet, the
become
issue
very
remains.
conscious.
Sorry, say that again.
Oh, sorry. You can see through different lenses now.
Yeah.
You know, that when you look back and you say, yeah, there were happy times. Definitely there were. And you can hold on to those. But, excuse me. But, I mean, there's nothing like they have nowadays. Everything seems to be placed for whatever you're going through trauma, PTSD, ADHD, all those things are set up for people, and nothing like that happened in... But I think just being in a community, I think that's a kind of strengthen the bond. I mean, when I look back now and I can talk to somebody, I haven't actually done that, but it'd be interesting for me to look back and see what was really going on, you know, with them at that time.
So, like I said, with the line of progression, with the line, put your life on the line. You know, you see your development. You see, if you put everything on there, you'll see your achievements, your good experiences, your bad. But you see what's impacted you.
And seeing how you coped with it, I suppose that's what it is, knowing how you've dealt with those negative experiences and how you dealt with the positive ones, and how you dealt with them negatively, you know, and perhaps undo the way you deal with them.
Yeah, that's undoing it.
I think that's it.
And some of these are coping mechanisms.
Yeah.
It's just like, okay, this is used as withdrawal. You just withdraw yourself from people. That's a coping mechanism. You may say, I don't want to deal with this, I haven't got time for this, I don't need to deal with this, or I don't want to face this, let me just withdraw myself. I find comfort in just withdrawing myself and avoiding the conflict. That's a coping mechanism.
It's a defense mechanism, like a tortoise going in a shell.
Yeah.
If I just go in the shell, the problem will go away, but the problem's still there.
Because the same event happens again, and you do the same thing, so it's continuous. It's a cycle.
Yeah, but don't think sometimes you need to withdraw to be able to understand it all.
So that's a different context. I'm talking the context of withdrawing yourself because you don't want to face it.
Behaviour patterns in people.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a behavioural pattern in people.
And they do it a lot.
Yeah.
Especially if they get triggered.
So something triggers and they can't manage the trigger, so they withdraw themselves. So something inside is being triggered. That means there's something there to be triggered. And what you want to do is that thing what's there, you want to face it, to uproot it. So when you're in an environment that will trigger that trigger or that thing inside, there's nothing inside to be triggered because it's not there no more because you faced it. So that means you don't need to go into your coping mechanism. You know, because of power is broken, that drives, that brings you to your coping mechanism. That's what I'm trying to get to. You know, we want peace. We don't want to be running away. You know, avoiding conflict and things like that. You know,
or change or uncomfortableness.
Yeah, we just want peace. You know, why does many alcoholics drink? Because there's something missing. There's something missing inside. Or people who are addicted to pornography, there's something missing. They go to these places for some sort of comfort, to experience something. They want the craving for an experience, and they get it in an artificial way, in a counterfeit way, because they're not getting it elsewhere, or they've been neglected of it. So there's something inside what they're craving for, and they're getting this temporary fix or this temporary experience. It brings them something, you know, in the moment, you know.
And I think it's very easy to blame other people instead of look at what our part in that is. So it's an easier way perhaps to say something's gone wrong, and it must be these people's fault, so I'll just not speak to these people. I'll just cut off from them because it's all their fault. And I think that's a defence mechanism, because you perhaps have expectations from those people. They don't deliver, and you say, they're just not nice. They're not doing what I want them to do. They didn't do how I thought they should behave. They didn't deliver the goods. And so now I'm going to hide. I'm going to withdraw because I don't want to be hurt anymore. I don't want anyone to not deliver. I'm sick of all this. Throw in the towel. And it's really, the issue is the way you viewed them in the first place, and how you interpreted what they said or did to you. And then you go away like a wounded animal, and it's like, it's never going to get solved, because then the people think, oh, where have they gone? What have we done now? And they don't understand what's going on. And you're not really being honest with the way you're behaving towards them. And I think we can all do that on a different level. You know, we think it's all the fault of our spouse or the fault of our parents, or, you know, it's someone else's fault all the time. And it's an easy way to not deal with your own issues, because the problem's with them, not me. I don't have any problems. Yeah, I might have some problems, but my problems aren't as big as theirs. You know, compare and contrast. So I'm nice, and they're just not nice. I don't know. But the deep thing with that is they've really got insecurities. We've got insecurities about ourselves, and we're just projecting those onto people.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that, you know, growing up we do so easy. It's that person's fault and this person's fault. But when you realize that as you become an adult, that no, everything I think that happens to you in your life, it's not so much like your fault, because I couldn't blame somebody if they were small and something happened to me, got abused. But it's just taking that responsibility of
yes,
of actually admitting that everything, I mean, now is like it happens because somewhere deep down in your mind, that's how you thought about yourself.
So how you reacted was your choice. So it wasn't so much what happened to you, but it's how you reacted was your choice. And that's shaped by people and circumstances as well. Obviously, how you react to it is deeper ingrained or negatively pushed in a certain direction by the way people respond to you. So if you've got continual abuse coming on you, the way you react is going to be, you know, I'm worthless, I'm not good. And you've chosen to believe that, but you've got a good reason to choose perhaps to believe that, but it's still a choice now not to believe that. And that's the good thing about choice, you can change it now.
Yeah. So as we close, let me just go back to Jacob. So my last example using Jacob. When Jacob looks back, he looks back and says, God was in his place and I knew it not. That's Jacob looking back at an experience. I want to use that on ourselves. Are there many times where we've looked back? You know, if you look back to your line, are there moments where you've looked back and you said, okay, God was in this and I knew it not. God was there, God God was there at all these different events, and I knew it not. God was in this trial. Let me change this place of Bethel to a trial. God was in this trial that I went through, and I knew it not. Only when I got out of it, and I look back, I'm looking back now, and I realize, oh no, this was God. God was here with me all along. What does that teach you about yourself? What can we learn from that? What was you going through in that while you was in that experience when you didn't know that it was God? What was going on inside? Why did you not believe it? What was going on? You take it as a learning, curve. Learn about yourself. How did you react in that situation? So when you look at this wrestling in chapter 32, in one situation, in the past or in this trial, you could be you can be blaming it on, you could be saying, oh, this is all the enemy, so I'm gonna resist, I'm gonna fight, or whatever it may be. You can say this is the enemy. In verse 24, it appears like it's the enemy Jacob's fighting. His fight is wrestling. He resists. In one situation, you could be calling it, oh, this is all the devil. This is just the devil. This is just an attack. I'm not saying it's all attacks from Satan, but you could be saying it's all Satan. But if you live up until verse 30, you'd be calling it something totally opposite. You'd be saying, oh, this is God. God was here and I knew it not. God was in this place and I knew it not. So one thing you're calling it enemy, when you come out of it, you'd be calling it God. When you look back and you say, God was here and I knew it not, what would you calling it? What would you calling it while you was in that place, in that trial? What would you call in that experience? So when that experience happens again, what are you going to call it? What are you going to accept? Are you going to acknowledge that God is doing a work in me? He's trying to teach me something in this circumstance. Because circumstances reveal to us who we are. This wrestle revealed to Jacob who he was. But if we don't accept it, if we don't acknowledge what God's doing, we'd just be blaming it on the devil. This is the devil, he's out to get me. But maybe, is there something we need to learn? We need to uproot. So take every trial, every experience as a learning curve. Emma mentioned Peter the other week, when he was walking with Jesus for 3.5 years. He wasn't listening, he had issues, and Ellen White says only circumstances will bring to light those things, those hidden elements in those hidden evil elements in his heart will spring to life only through these circumstances. So if you acknowledge that these circumstances are designed to show you what's in your heart and not resist it, don't fight it, don't pray that it will go well. It's easier said than done when you're in these situations. We just want it to stop. I'm not saying it's easy. I know what it's like to want to experience to just go away. Lord, just remove this from me. Take this cup away from me. Jesus experienced it in the Garden of Gethsemane. But we learn from these experiences. Peter had to learn what he couldn't learn walking with Christ or listening to Christ, because his ears were hard. He had to learn through experiences, and this man walked with Jesus. So we'll stop there. Any final thoughts?
No.
Okay, we close there then. So compare and contrast. What's the other one? Cause and effect. We've already spoke about 2 so far, and the line of progression. But we're seeing how much it can teach us about who we are. We don't. It's not just limited to the Bible studies, but you can also apply it to yourself. And there's more to bring out with compare and contrast. There's probably more examples I can use. But just run with it, practice with it, You know, when you're studying the Bible, put these things into practice. Don't just read and just take what's given on the surface and just say amen and close the book. Read it, study it, break it down, because you'll be surprised what you will get from these verses or these paragraphs, what it gives us. There's so much treasure to be revealed, only if you take the time to read. So run with these principles and apply them. Learn how to use them. I'm guaranteed you'll learn about yourself. You'll learn more about God. And for me, it's comforting. So we'll end there and we'll pray.
Dear Father, we thank you for this study, this reflection on the life of Jacob, and comparing and contrasting it to therapy today and what we can do as individuals to see the causes and effects in our own lives, to do a line of progression and recognise where you have brought us from in each of our lives. From childhood up to now, our experiences have been shaped by our interaction with other people and by our circumstances in our lives. And as we reflect back, we can see perhaps the choices we've made, the reactions we have to things and to people now are affected by all those things that have happened to us, negatively and positively. Please help us as we review our lives to recognise your hand that was over us, to recognise how we viewed you and how we viewed other people and how this has damaged us. And help us now in the present to make right choices, to see that we do have the ability to choose to change circumstances, to change the way we view things, the way we treat people. Thank you that we still have time to accept this message of equality and to fully embrace who you are, Lord, and that we might reflect your character to others in the best way possible. We pray that you would guide and direct us going forward and that you would heal all the hurts and all the pain that has been done to us and that we have caused to others. Please forgive us for our sins and help us, Lord, to fully trust you from this point forward. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.